North Americans are not willing to tighten their belt and pull out of this bankruptcy. Therefore, Americans will continue to borrow and borrow and borrow. The United States government will continue to borrow. And eventually, in about 30 years, there will be no assets of any kind. We will have consumed everything we own, and the entire nation will collapse like a house of cards. Well, I've been watching for 30 years, 36 years to be exact. 2 years ago, I was in France. I knew that we were getting close to the zero asset mark. You know, before, in 1971, the U.S. government had this many assets, but it was equivalent to this debt. But the time was coming, according to the Federal Reserve President, chairman of the Federal Reserve, the time was coming in about 30 years when all of those assets, the rest of the assets we had, would be consumed or borrowed on and mortgaged to the point where eventually there would be zero that we own. It wasn't, at that point, it's not called bankruptcy, it's called slavery. If you owe $1,000 and you have nothing, you're a slave. If you own 57 trillion and you own nothing, you're a slave. The entire nation is slaves, financial slaves. And so, I kept watching, and I watched the end. And when I got to Europe, when I was preaching in Paris 2 years ago, they handed me a special report from a French economic organization. And it said on there, North America now owns 2%, and its debt is 98% of all its assets. It can no longer even pay the interest, even if 100% of the taxes that were collected were put on the interest, you'd have to borrow money to finish paying the interest. In other words, it is impossible. It's like an airplane that's going, and there is a point where no matter what you do, you can't pull out. You understand, right? You can pull back, you can rip the wings off if you want, but you're still going in. And that's what, we reached that point nearly 10 years ago. In other words, in 1971, it was just a matter of, we were in a slight dive, we could have tightened our belt and gone through a recession and pulled out of it. But as we kept borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, the speed kept going on, the interest build on interest and the interest on the interest, and now you're borrowing money to pay the interest, and even if you dedicate 100%, closed all government facilities, everything would be dedicated, you can't pay the interest. At this point, you can never pull out. It's guaranteed future collapse. Now, in last 2 years ago, we were down to 2% assets and 98% external debt. Well, at this point, it's just a matter of time. When? According to the French publication, there was something, an aggravated problem that added to that. The United States government had recently gone into war with Iraq, calculated, at that point, they calculated $500 million a day. The most recent calculation is $2 billion a day. They said the United States has no money to finance a war. And in addition to that, they now have Homeland Security putting in new security systems all over the airports. All of those are federal employees. They have no money to pay for that. They have no taxes available. Taxes are not going up. Even if you took 100% of everybody's income, everything you work, everything you make, not 10%, not 20%, not 50% taxes, 100%. If the government were to take 100% of everything you make, it still could not pay the interest. So they said the government has decided to find another way to pay for it. They decided to what they call monetize the debt. Print all the money you need to pay your interest. Now, they also are printing money to pay for the war, and they're printing money to pay for all the Homeland Security costs. Now, I don't know if I have a piece of paper here. I hope I have a piece of paper. If I have one here, I need to illustrate something. Or if you can find the paper for me somewhere, I need one. Amazing. Thank you very much, sir. That's just what I needed. Thanks. I'm going to illustrate it for you because until you actually see it illustrated, it's kind of hard to grasp. Of course, you all are educated. You all can grasp it easier than some people, but I still want to illustrate it. Let's assume you have a bottle of water. And bottle of water is what's most valuable in our world. Okay? Let's assume in our world, not gold. Gold is in our world, but let's assume it's water. And every time I have to buy something, I have to take a little water and pour it out. How many drops of water do I need to pay you for that? So much. Okay, you drop a cup of water, then I buy my groceries, and you walk around with your bottle of water, right? But it's kind of a pain because sometimes you drop a drop and it's inconvenient, and sometimes you spill or evaporates. So instead of moving the water around and risking losing it, why don't we just leave it in the central bank, and let's just publish some paper that represents 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, 4 sheets. How much is each sheet? How much water is each sheet worth? 1/4 of a bottle. Okay, so now if I need to buy a car that costs 1/4 of a bottle of water, instead of taking the water, I just take this because it's signed by the treasurer of the nation, payable on demand. If you really want water, just take it over to the treasury. They will give you a 1/4 of a bottle of water. Oh, in that case, just give me the paper. I mean, why should I bother? It's more secure. Good. So you trade this way for a while, and somebody says, well, I need an eighth of a bottle of water. So of course, there's smaller papers that represent less money. Okay, so all the money is equivalent. Anytime you want to, it's worth 1/4 of a bottle of water. But then the government says, man, we're short on money. Why don't we just print more money? And so you're still buying a quarter. But then somewhere along the way, somebody says, you know what? There's more than 4 quarters here. How much is each paper worth now? There's 8 of them. Each paper is now worth an eighth of a bottle of water. That's called inflation. Devaluation, right? There's a devaluation. Each paper, this paper which bought a 1/4 of a bottle of water can only buy an eighth of a bottle of water. But the government just started a war. It needs a lot of money. Okay? Like, how about $2 billion a day worth of money? It doesn't know how to get it. Because if it taxed all Americans and raised your taxes double, Americans would quickly get angry and vote the government out of power, right? Don't raise my taxes. You can't double my like that. That's, man, the fastest way to get a president fired is for him to double the taxes. Okay. Now, how much is each worth? I don't know. But they're worth a lot less, right? And then a lot less, and you keep going and going. Now how much? I'm paying all my soldiers. Look. How much do I owe you for your soldier for being in Iraq? So much, okay? How much do I owe you for the interest? Here, oh, look, a lot of money for the interest, okay? How much do I owe you for Homeland Security? So much. Man, I got money to pay all my bills. Look at this. Isn't this good? I can pay my bill. I still got some left over. Well, I can give Cheney a contract and help him and Bush and other things. Okay. That way there's money, plenty of money left over. Now, you say to yourself, we're doing good. The economy is good. There's money floating around. Until you take the money and you say, I want some water. And lo and behold, neither is there any water. It's all empty. There's no assets. They've already been used up. They were used up a long time ago. We're not on the gold standard anymore. We're not even on a paper standard. We're simply printing money, and there is no standard. Now, I want to ask you something serious now. If I owe you $20 today, in the offering, some of you put some money in the offering. Do you think the conference will actually use that money? Yeah. Why? Because, interestingly enough, when a conference goes to pay its electric bill or to do evangelism, they take the money. If I owe you $20 and I handed you a $20 bill, would you take it? Yeah. Because you still think the paper has money. Value, As long as we keep the game, as long as we keep ourselves believing that it has value, you can give me your money, I will spend it, I'll go to the grocery store, they will take my money, everything will. I'll go to the gas station, pump gas. I still get gasoline for those papers. But one day, the balloon will pop. When it pops, it will be discovered that this is only paper. Now, if I pay you a $20 bill, you'll say, give me something that has value. Why don't you give me some groceries? Why don't you give me some medical care? But do not give me paper, because the paper is worthless. Now, that's where we are right now in our nation. The paper is worthless. Yesterday I read in one economic report, they forecast that very soon people will be using $100 bills as toilet paper.